so we all know what time it is this time of year when it comes to season. It is summer. Movies and everything and all the blockbuster titles are pretty much coming out at the moment. But one of the big things that a lot of people are excited for is Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I personally do love the first couple Spider-Man movies, including the ones with Tobey Maguire. But it did kind of make me think, what are the Spider-Man games that I think a lot of people have overlooked when it came to some video games? One of my personal favorites that I grew up as a kid was Spider-Man 2000 on the Nintendo 64. This was a bright red cartridge, actually, and you can just tell right here. This was a really great game, but in all honesty, when you compare it to the other versions, there are a couple things that kind of made me a little nitpicky. So later in life, I picked up the PS1 copy, and I love this one even more. I know this was signed by Tommy Tallarico, what a great guy. It did start to make me think, what is the comparisons between all of them? So today we're going to go into a new edition of Port versus Port for Spider-Man 2000. We're going to take a look at 3 titles. We're going to take a look at the PS1 version, the Nintendo 64 Port, as well as the Dreamcast. There was one Windows, but I'm not going to look at today. Let's go into an overview. Let's start, give you the guys the basics, and then we'll start to go down into the nitty-gritty. So let's start. Now let us begin with one of my favorite superhero games. This, guys, is Spider-Man, made in 2000. It was first developed by Neversoft and then published by Activision. Throughout there, it's actually been ported through many different companies and people, and I'll start slowly getting into that, but let's start with the dates because, oh my god. So the PS1 version came out in August 20th of 2000. That, of course, was Neversoft and Activision. Then Nintendo 64 version was in November 21st, 2000, and it was actually helped by Edge of Reality. The last one, which is the Dreamcast one, was in April 19th, 2001, and that was done by Treyarch. Now, there was a Windows version, and I won't be focusing on that today. However, I will give you the dates and who it was done. It was released in September 17, 2001 by LTI Gray. To give you guys a little basic overview of what this game is, it is one of the first really realized Spider-Man games as well as superhero games. It basically used a level system that allowed you to navigate through different sections of the game with preoccupied little objectives in each section. It used a basic combat and targeting system, allowing you to target different enemies with your web, and you can tie them up, punch them, kick them. You can use web gloves or a web shield, and there was a lot of different combinations that you could do, along with new costumes, upgrades, everything. This game is actually pretty much jam-packed with classic 90s jam-packedness, for lack of a better term. It also did use a little bit of a cheat system and allowed you to put different cheats, so if you are a lazy fuck like I am, you could just pretty much get everything at one sweep, including a level select. Music was actually done by Tommy Tallarico, which is one of my favorite composers, and he actually made the soundtrack for Earthworm Jim and started Video Games Live, and if you guys have not seen Video Games Live, it is a wonderful spectacle. I would highly recommend it if it's in your town. The thing is, a lot of these tracks are 1 to 2 minutes long. They're kind of used in various parts of the game. However, the thing is, they kind of have a little bit of a loop to them, so they kind of stop for a bit, and then when the action picks up, it kind of just goes in, and you can just hear it encompass you, and then it kind of goes in and out. However, the ports actually kind of mismanaged this when it came to the music, and I'll get into that later. But story premises, Doc Ock has made a little machine, and Spider-Man somehow stole a machine. He looks like a dum-dum, and basically 2 guys just turn New York into little puff Chicago. That's the premise of the game. It's actually one of the games that's interesting because it uses a technical limitation and integrates it in its story, which has come to fog. So pretty much why you see there's a lot of fog in the game and the drops in the distance is horrible is an actual story element. So I will say it is smart of the developers to do that. But if you guys want a great title and a great Spider-Man game, and one of my favorite Spider-Man games too, I would highly recommend getting this title. It is great, it is worth your getting. But the question is, which of the ports is worth buying? Now, like I said, I'm only going to focus on the PS1, the N64, and the Dreamcast. I'm not looking at the Windows today. I would want to go through the console experience. So we are going to start with a PS1 title today.
The heating bill for this place must be enormous. And I thought crime didn't pay.
Alright folks, so let us begin. We're going to start with the PlayStation 1. Of course, this is going to be the base version across all consoles, whether it's going to be up or downscaled. So the PS1 is outputting at a 240p signal with 640 by 480. The game is running rather stable, it does have a little bit of dips here and there, but so far the game does run rather nicely. Textures are pretty detailed on both the buildings and Spider-Man's suit, as well as a couple different characters. Let's take Rhino for example, he looks pretty nice with his armored suit. One of the PS1's weaknesses is when it actually does 3D models, it just looks very dated and it just doesn't go by today's standards at all. So when you actually see it today in all of its pixelated glory, you're gonna see a mesh of mess. That's why you see the PS3 have like smoothing options and stuff like that to kind of tackle that. So being on CD, it allowed the developers and Tommy Tallarico to add more content into this, so that's where the FMVs and the music come into play. The music is done in CD quality and it is done very well and it sounds very nice and beautiful. Hitting high and low tones with its rock and new metal soundtracks, you really are going to feel the beat when it kind of comes into it, although there are some silent moments pretty much. Overall, the PS1 is a good choice if you want to start out with, but let's start with the N64 port, and oh my god, this thing is a goddamn mess. Jesus, it's a fucking mess. So naturally the N64 cannot output anything close to the PS1, so you're going to see some downscaling it significantly. It is outputting at a 240p signal, but the problem is this is a cartridge itself, so it's limited in both music and scope, meaning there is going to be a bunch of problems littered in it. First of all, we're going to get into the cutscenes. There are actually no FMVs at all. All of the FMVs have been returned with slideshows, so it actually looks rather horrible when you're going through that in comparison to the PS1. Although I will say this, it does add a little bit of a nice kick when you're actually playing it. Also, there is some bad optimization that comes into us. The menus are rather horribly done, textures are pretty much butchered and watered down, and it's just bad overall. Load times are decent and steady, and it's just bad overall. I will say this, because it is cartridge, load times are really good, but everything else, it just really falls flat. The music is actually one of the things I want to touch upon too, because a lot of the tracks have actually been mismanaged. So for example, we're going to go into the water trench scene. This track that you see in the PS1 version is actually in the Doc Ock section. So for some reason the music has been switched around. Just take a listen and you'll see exactly what I mean.
Hey, you could put someone's eye out with that.
Rat's locked.
Well, let's try door number 2.
So overall, the N64 version is basically butchered. It is watered down, and I will say this is the best quality you can see on the N64 on official hardware. All of my consoles are outputting in their best quality possible on their original hardware, and you can see what I mean by how mismanaged and horrible it really looks. This is the best it can do, and it still looks horrible. But after that, we're going to move into the Dreamcast title, and there's a lot I want to talk about, in the good way, and you'll see why. Alright, so the Dreamcast port is the most surprising out of all. Yes, I do know it's a Dreamcast, so you'll probably get the best port. But it's not just a simple port, they actually added quite a bit of stuff. Most notably, they actually added new models. If you look at the Spider-Man model, you can see that they added new textures and everything towards him. It is still the base model, but in terms of textures, they added quite a bit to him. Not only that, they added it to most of the enemies, to the NPCs, everyone. They even added new textures to the buildings and the environments and everything. Mind you, I know it is outputting in 480p with VGA, but it's just rather astronomical that they actually went to this stuff. They made entirely new textures for this game. Now keep in mind, this is actually a little wonky that they did. Spider-Man, he actually has fingers. Now this looks very fucking weird, because when you see Spider-Man swing in the regular PS1 version, he has a very blocky hand, as well as the N64. However, when you go to the Dreamcast version, it still has that blocky animation, but the fingers itself aren't articulated. It just makes a very awkward thing. So it's a little side note just to kind of see. But other than that, this is pretty much an upscaled PS1 version. It has all the bells and whistles. You can go into Rogue's Gallery and see that all the NPCs and textures have been rechanged, and the music does sound a little bit crisper. But other than that, it's pretty much a great version. The frame rate is pretty steady, everything is in check. Treyarch actually did a pretty good job porting this over and actually building on top of it. So honestly, you're gonna get most of your bang for your buck on the Dreamcast version, and honestly the colors and everything just pop out so beautifully when it's in VGA. And finally, I think you guys need to see a comparison of the three. I can't really put them side by side, but I'll show them video after video so you guys can get a little taste of it. First starting with the PS1, the N64, then the Dreamcast. From there, you guys can get a little value and little estimate of what you are going to be getting with each version. I'm basically doing the first level of the game so you can get an idea of the interaction and the gameplay, and maybe compare a little bit of everything else in between. So pretty much this is just going off of each other, so hope you guys enjoy it.
Hey, Spider!
Hey, Black Cat, what's going on?
I know there's been some trouble.
But the bank's being robbed, and they've got hostages. Use your Spidey compass to get to the bank quickly.
Thanks, Cat. Thanks, Cat.
It's tingling. Something's going on here.
I'm already at full health.
So as always, the choice is always yours. What version do you think that you guys should get? Personally, I would prefer getting the Dreamcast. I just recently started playing that, and I was actually surprised. Like, there's a lot of good shit in there, despite, you know, a little weird articulated fingers. If anything, I would say get the Dreamcast version, or if anything, you could always get the PS1. It's a great backup. Please, please, please avoid the Nintendo 64. I had this one as a kid, actually. Actually, this is my cartridge as a kid. So I suffered through that, fuck that. Oh, great. So thank you guys so much for checking out the video today. I really do appreciate it. The fact that you guys are giving me so much love and support from these port versus ports are really making me want to get serious about them, look at other titles. But what do you guys want? What other titles do you want to see? Or maybe do you want to see a new variety of shows? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear you guys, honestly. And if you want to follow what I personally do, you can also follow me on Twitch at 9 p.m. Pacific time every single weekday. I stream every single day. I'm currently playing Resident Evil 5 right now, and the game is a little bit of a doozy, but I'm trekking along. We're doing pretty good. So thank you guys. I always do appreciate your love. I'm gonna see you next time.
1 to the 3. I like good pussy and I like good trees. Smoke so much weed you wouldn't believe, and I get more ass than a toilet seat. 3 to the 1, from the 1 to the 3. I met a bad bitch last night in the D. Let me tell you how I made her leave with me. Conversation and Hennessy. I've been to the motherfucking mountaintop. Heard motherfuckers talk, seen them drop. If I ain't got a weapon, I'ma pick up a rock. And when